Dirt 5's technical director gives us some interesting insight on the haptics for the PS5's DualSense controller and on the Xbox Series X's I/O throughput. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Thank you for stopping by if you're new here and you enjoyed what you see throughout this video. Hey, maybe consider subscribing. I'm so close to 1K subscribers. I'm about 4 subscribers away, and it would be really awesome to get there. I will be doing a giveaway once I hit that 1K. But for now, let's jump into this. So the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X have both recently been released, and we are obviously not seeing the full potential of these consoles yet, as that's going to become further down the line. But we're getting some feedback on just what can be done while games have already been released, and then in the future of games from the Dirt 5 technical director, David Springate. Firstly, he starts talking about the actual haptics within the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller, with the DualSense controller actually having some really cool features in it. Haptic feedback with the rumble, adaptive triggers that increase and decrease the resistance of the actual triggers. So he says here, talking about the PlayStation 5's DualSense haptics, saying, I've seen a lot of people say I want to pick up Dirt 5 on PS5 because of the haptics. It's really interesting to me because I've seen a lot of people I hang out with on various forums, and I hang out in the Dirt 5 Discord. I've seen a lot of people, they really like the PS5 haptics. We're not happy with it, so we're going to be revisiting our haptics, even though I've not seen anybody say I hate the haptics in Dirt 5. We are not happy with it, so we're going to go back and redo it. Obviously, the haptics with the DualSense controller can be utilized in many different ways, can really enhance your experience when you're playing games on the PlayStation 5. And the fact that they can go in after the game has been released and change how the controller functions, depending on what you're doing in the game and how it actually interacts with the environment, I think is an interesting feature, and we may see that throughout the life cycle of the PlayStation 5. They'll release a game, the haptic feedbacks and the adaptive triggers won't be optimized, they won't be working as well as devs would want it to, and then they can go in and see how people are interacting with the game and then maybe change up how the controller actually functions. And I think that's kind of cool because we're going to see a lot of interesting stuff come out of that controller throughout this generation if third parties continue to do stuff like Dirt 5 is going to be doing and really try to optimize that controller to make the game the most engaging possible. Now, I've talked about Dirt 5 before. I have it on the Xbox Series X, and it looks amazing. Even with the Xbox Series X controller, they've utilized the impulse triggers, I find, really well, and it actually adds to the experience. When you're going around corners, you feel the triggers going crazy. When you're braking, when you're turning and stuff like that, it just makes the experience a better game overall. So using the features within the Xbox Series X controller and the PlayStation 5 DualSense is going to be vital going into the next generation for the immersion of these games. Now we move on to him talking about the I/O throughput for the Xbox Series X, and this is where things get super interesting with these next generation consoles. We're talking about the Xbox Series X and velocity architecture. Springate claimed to have done tests showing getting 10 gigabytes in 2 seconds of raw I/O throughput, and said that the Xbox Series X could possibly do better than that. Here is what he says: we look at all things all of the time. I can't promise which stuff is going to come in future patches because we have to balance loads of different things, but it might. That's the best I can do in terms of fast storage on the Series X. I think that hardware is great. I worked on it with Microsoft early on and provided some feedback to them. I looked at the speed that we could get from it. You can get 10 gigabytes in 2 seconds in my personal early test. It may well be able to do way better than that. And that's without compression with the hardware, that's just raw speeds. Then he asked about why Microsoft would advertise lower than 2.5 gigabytes per second for the raw I/O throughput. He explains this, saying, the way to get the most out of the fast storage on all platforms is to make many requests at once. You want to load 500 textures, forget loading one texture. You want to load them all. That then gives you some challenges on how to lay your data. You need to know where they're going to go in the memory, and you need to know what is it you need before you ask for it. That's a challenge. It's not hardware. It's not the API for Microsoft or Sony. It's an engineering challenge. We're very close. We've done loads of testing. It's not something I'm going to come to saying it'll come in a patch, but it's something I'm very interested in personally. Now, Microsoft has been talking a lot about the Xbox velocity architecture. I don't think it's being utilized yet, obviously. From what I understand with the Xbox Series X development kits is that they were sent out relatively late because Microsoft waited as long as possible before locking down the specs of the system, getting the full RDNA 2. We're obviously not seeing the full potential of the Xbox Series X right now, and who knows how long it's going to take before we see the full potential. So this console in general is going to not be showing off what it really can do for a decent amount of time until the specs and until the developers can really pull out the power of that console. But who knows what that means? I mean, we always get all of these promises of these things that are supposed to come, and do they actually come to fruition? We'll have to wait and see for that. But it really does sound promising with the Xbox Series X, with everything in it, all the technologies they've added into it, and the fact that it is relatively new and they waited long to lock down those hardware specifications, to lock down their dev kits and send them out to the developers. It's going to take a while before they can actually utilize them fully. When it comes to the Xbox Velocity architecture, it's a bunch of complex kind of stuff, but basically what it does is it improves the Xbox Series X, how it loads game assets from storage known as asset streaming, or reducing space for those assets that they occupy on the drive. The solution tackles two challenges modern titles face, with installation sizes rapidly on the rise and more computationally demanding than ever. The upshot is a backbone to support complex next generation games while also reducing loading times. And one of the interesting things is that with the Xbox Velocity architecture, it has sampler feedback streaming, which is a brand new innovation, and it's built upon the Xbox Velocity architecture. And basically, game textures are optimized at differing levels of detail and resolution called bitmaps, and can be used during rendering based on how close or how far away an object is from the player. As an object moves closer to the player, the resolution of the texture must increase to provide the crisp detail and visuals that the gamers expect. Now, today developers really have to load in the entire MIP level in memory, even in cases where they may only sample a very small portion of the overall texture. Now, with the Xbox Series X GPU, enables it to only load the sub portions of MIP level into memory on demand, just in time for when the GPU requires that data. So this will result in approximately 2.5 times the effective IO throughput and memory usage above the beyond raw hardware capabilities on average. So the sampling feedback streaming provides an effective multiplier on available system memory and IO bandwidth, resulting in significantly more memory and IO throughput available to make the games richer and more immersive. So that sounds really interesting to me, and we'll have to see how it really significantly increases the IO throughput. I mean, I'm no expert on how this stuff works, but it all seems very, very promising. And like I said, with the Xbox Series X specifically, because the dev kits got sent out late, we're not going to see what this console can fully do for a while, but I really hope we start seeing it soon, because people want to see how the games are going to look. People want to see the results of all this technology put into the Xbox Series X utilized, rather than having to wait for a very long time. Because right now, when you look at the Xbox Series X, it's not even anywhere near where it should be, or anywhere near that it could be going into the future. But right now, we're still getting great results and still having great games to play. But yeah, in general, this is just exciting stuff. We'll have to see how these developers implement Velocity architecture, how they utilize the dev kits for the Series X specifically going forward, and really pull out the power from it, because obviously we're not seeing the full potential of the console yet, and who knows how long it will be until we see that full potential of the Xbox Series X. But it's just going to be a very exciting generation. I think that this generation is going to have leaps and bounds improvements as it goes on compared to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And this generation may last even longer than the general 7 years, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But anyways, that's just what I think about this. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. What do you think about the Xbox Series X? What do you think about the PlayStation 5? Do you think that these consoles are going to continuously improve as their generation goes on, as the life cycle goes on? And I've been reading a lot about the dev kits for the Xbox Series X being sent out late because they waited so long to lock down their requirements. Let me know what you guys think about that, or do you think that's just kind of an excuse for the Xbox Series X early on in its life cycle? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you just like to hit that thumbs down button. If you're new here and you enjoyed what you see throughout this video, hey, maybe consider subscribing. Thank you guys all for watching. Thank you for all your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.